Villa del Prado, in the mountains near Madrid, 4:30 p.m. Diego Herrera, 42, a pharmaceutical industry magnate, comes home earlier than expected and hears laughter coming from the living room. He approaches quietly, and what he sees leaves him breathless. His daughter Carmen, age 4, whom doctors had declared would never walk, is taking her first wobbly steps toward the outstretched arms of Elena Morales, 28, the nanny hired just 2 weeks earlier. Diego freezes behind the door as his daughter, deemed a hopeless case by Europe's top neurologists, laughs and walks as if it were the most natural thing in the world. What he will learn about Elena and her revolutionary methods will forever change his views on medicine, love, and miracles. Villa del Prado stood majestically in the Madrid mountains, a gem of Spanish Renaissance architecture surrounded by gardens that looked painted by a master from the Golden Age. Diego Herrera had bought this historic mansion after his pharmaceutical company became one of Europe's most influential, turning it into a refuge blending modern luxury with timeless elegance. But within those gilded walls lay a tragedy no fortune could heal. Carmen was 4 years old and had never walked, born prematurely due to complications that also claimed her mother Isabel's life. The girl had been diagnosed by the world's leading neurologists with severe cerebral palsy that would permanently impair her mobility. The medical verdicts were unrelenting. She would never walk. She would need a wheelchair for life. It was best to accept it and focus on what she could do. Diego, who had built his empire selling hope in the form of groundbreaking drugs, found himself powerless against his daughter's condition. He had consulted top specialists from Madrid to Zurich, funded experimental research, and turned one room in the villa into a private clinic equipped with cutting-edge technology. Nothing worked. Carmen was a bright, lively child with a contagious smile, long brown hair, and green eyes full of curiosity despite her body's limitations. She had learned to get around skillfully in her customized wheelchair, painted pink with butterfly decals. But Diego saw the unspoken question in her eyes. Why couldn't she run like other kids? Nannies had come and gone like changing seasons. Some were highly professional but distant. Others were warm but unprepared for a child with special needs. All had accepted the medical diagnosis final, focusing on daily care rather than any hope of improvement. Even Diego had eventually given up. His days were split between corporate meetings deciding the fate of millions of patients worldwide and evenings at home, where he felt like the world's most failing father. He could cure rare diseases with his medications, but he couldn't help the one person who truly mattered. It was a Friday in September when the elite domestics agency recommended Elena Morales, 28, a physical therapist specializing in pediatrics with impeccable references from Madrid's top families, and experience with children with special needs. Special needs. Diego agreed to the interview more out of obligation than hope. He needed someone to care for Carmen while he traveled for work. Elena arrived one Sunday morning with a small suitcase and a smile that lit up her face. She was average height with blonde hair and a neat ponytail, dressed simply but elegantly. What struck Diego immediately were her deep blue eyes, full of a determination he'd never seen in previous nannies. When Elena explained her approach, talking about hidden potential, the mind-body connection, and miracles born from patience, Diego thought she sounded overly idealistic. But Carmen adored her instantly. The girl, usually shy with strangers, started chatting with Elena as if they'd known each other forever. She showed off her doll collection, the drawings on her walls, and her favorite stories. Elena listened fully, asked real questions, and laughed genuinely at Carmen's antics. Diego hired her that very night, more for Carmen's reaction than belief in her unconventional methods. He had no idea he was about to witness the greatest miracle of his life. 2 weeks after Elena's arrival, Diego noticed subtle but real changes in Carmen. She was more energetic, laughed more often, and seemed more confident. What he didn't know was that Elena was working with his daughter, using methods far beyond basic care. Every morning, Elena turned Carmen's playroom into a movement lab. She never called them exercises. They were magic games. Carmen, sitting on the soft rug, learned to make her legs fly like butterflies or swim in the air, movements designed to wake dormant neural connections. When Diego was home, he watched skeptically. Doctors had explained that Carmen's neurological damage was permanent, certain brain connections irreparably lost. Seeing Elena encourage leg movement seemed almost cruel, like raising false hopes. But he couldn't deny Carmen's happiness. She looked forward to magic game time, laughed through the sessions, and started dreaming aloud about running in the garden. Diego wrestled with whether to stop it or let his daughter stay so joyful. Elena also introduced a new routine. Instead of just pushing Carmen's wheelchair, she encouraged the girl to use her arm muscles to propel herself. Hallway trips became adventures, and Carmen pushed eagerly toward each goal. Her arm muscles strengthened visibly, boosting her self-esteem. Evenings were for foot theater. Alina invented stories where Carmen's feet were characters learning to dance. Lying in bed, Carmen wiggled her toes along with the tails, giggling at the silly foot adventures. Diego had heard neurologists dismiss such movements as meaningless reflexes, but Elena insisted every voluntary twitch built toward a miracle. One night, alone at dinner in the grand dining room, Diego heard prolonged laughter from upstairs. He crept up and paused at Carmen's half-open door. Elena sat cross-legged on the floor, telling a story with different voices. Carmen lay on her stomach, propped on her elbows, eyes wide with wonder. But what startled Diego was seeing Carmen rhythmically moving her legs as if walking while lying down. Elena wove it naturally into the tale, the princess running through a magic meadow. Diego walked away confused. Doctors called those spasms involuntary, but Elena seemed to see something others missed. On the second Friday, Diego was supposed to travel to Brussels for a critical meeting with the European Commission on new experimental drugs, potentially worth hundreds of millions. For the first time, he hesitated to leave home, sensing he might miss something big. The Brussels meeting went perfectly. 3 drugs approved for rare diseases, huge profits ahead, and help for thousands. It should have been his proudest career day, but all he wanted was to get home. His plane landed in Madrid 2 hours early. Diego decided not to tell Elena. He wanted to surprise Carmen. Driving through the Madrid mountains toward Villa del Prado, he felt oddly excited, like something life-changing was coming. It was coming. It was 4:30 p.m. when Diego quietly opened the front door. Afternoon sun streamed through tall windows, dancing on ancient marble floors. The house was peacefully quiet, but then he heard it. Laughter real and joyful, the kind he hadn't heard since Isabel died. It came from the grand living room, now Carmen's play area. Diego tiptoed closer and stopped at the cracked door. What he saw froze him. Elena stood in the room's center, arms outstretched, beaming. 2 meters away, Carmen was standing up. Her small hands pressed the floor, her leg muscles, declared non-functional, visibly contracting, to hold her. Carmen took a hesitant step forward, then another. Her feet planted with growing confidence as she laughed that crystal-clear laugh, the most beautiful sound in the world, stepping toward Elena's arms. Diego's knees weakened. His daughter, subjected to every medical test, was standing on her own. Her legs, deemed neurologically useless, were supporting her. When she reached Elena and threw herself into her arms, they both burst into freeing laughter that filled the villa. Elena lifted her and spun her around as Carmen squealed with joy. Diego leaned against the wall, tears streaming down his face. What he'd seen defied everything he knew about medicine and human limits. His daughter had walked, not perfectly, but real, voluntary steps, impossible by every diagnosis. Carmen spotted her father and lit up. She pulled free from Elena, stood again, and started walking toward him. Each step was a revolution. Diego knelt and opened his arms. When Carmen threw herself into them, he held her tight, as if he'd never let go, and they bow. He cried uncontrollably as she whispered that Elena said feet could learn to walk if you told them the right stories. Diego looked up at Elena, who watched with tears but also worry. She knew this raised questions beyond conventional medicine. Who was Elena Moralesi, really? How had she achieved what top experts called impossible? That night, after tucking in Carmen, who wouldn't stop recounting her magic adventure, Diego and Elena sat in the living room. The fireplace crackled softly. Outside, Madrid sparkled with lights. Diego had opened his best rioja, but neither touched their glasses. Silence hung heavy with unspoken questions. Diego looked at Elena as if seeing her anew, trying to reconcile the gentle nanny with the woman who'd performed a medical miracle. Elena broke the silence, explaining it wasn't magic but weeks of work based on science often overlooked. Children's neuroplasticity was far more powerful than many neurologists admitted. As she spoke, Diego learned her true story. She wasn't just a nanny. She had a PhD in neuroscience from Cambridge and had worked in an experimental clinic in Zurich on impossible pediatric cerebral palsy cases. Her methods yielded results defying expectations. Elena had left academia after tragedy. Her brother Mateo, paralyzed at 16 in a car accident, walked again thanks to her approaches. But the medical establishment rejected the results, sidelining her. She chose private work as a specialized nanny, helping families with hopeless children. Carmen was her seventh. The previous six had shown major improvements. Diego sat silent, absorbing revelations challenging his beliefs. He, builder of a traditional pharma empire, faced evidence of more effective approaches than his expensive treatments. Elena explained, hiding her full background. Experience taught her wealthy parents often trusted prestigious diagnoses over a woman's outsider hope. Diego understood her marginalization. In modern medicine, low-cost methods, time, patience, love, expertise, threatened profits. That night, Diego paced the halls, thinking of sleeping Carmen after her miracle. Elena sacrificing a brilliant career to help children quietly, and his role in a system failing those who needed it most. By morning, he'd made the biggest decision of his life. The months after that night changed life at Villa del Prado forever. Diego converted the East Wing into a private experimental clinic, equipping it with top rehab tech. But the real revolution was Elena's approach. Carmen improved daily. Her steps grew steadier. She ran through hallways, jumped on sofas, danced in the garden under Diego's tearful eyes. He still couldn't believe the transformation. Diego secretly funded Elena's research, redirecting company labs toward pediatric neuroplasticity. The first external case came by word of mouth. Maria Benitez, wife of a top surgeon at Ramon Y. Cajal Hospital, heard rumors of Villa del Prado miracles. Her 7-year-old son Francisco was tetraplegic after a pool accident. Elena agreed with strict confidentiality and no outside interference. Diego watched her work with Francisco as with Carmen. After 2 months, he moved his fingers. 4 months, sat alone. 6 months, parents wept seeing first steps. Word spread in Madrid medical circles. Diego got accusing calls from academics and colleagues, but desperate pleas from parents across Europe rejecting final verdicts. The turning point came one spring evening, dining in the garden with Carmen and Elena. Carmen boasted running fastest in school. Diego looked at his daughter, wheelchair-bound a year ago, and knew he couldn't keep the miracle private. Next day, he held a historic press conference. Before journalists, doctors, and parents of disabled children, he announced the Herrera Center for Pediatric Neuroplasticity. He presented Carmen and Francisco's cases, showed transformation videos, outlined scientific foundations backed by his labs. Most importantly, he pledged half his fortune to make therapies free. The reaction exploded. Medical peers accused him of betraying serious science. Journals ran editorials against false hopes, but thousands of parents worldwide called, bringing incurable children. Elena, once a quiet nanny, became central to an international debate dividing medicine. But she cared only for improving children, proving miracles come from love, science, and refusing to accept lost causes. 5 years after that world-shaking press conference, the Herrera Center for Pediatric Neuroplasticity was a global leader with sites in 12 countries and waiting lists from every continent. Carmen, now 9, symbolized what determination and love could achieve. She not only walked perfectly but started classical dance, fulfilling her childhood dream. Her viral videos on the center's social media inspired millions never to give up. Diego had transformed his company, shifting research toward innovative therapies for childhood disabilities. Labs collaborated with Elena's team on standardized protocols for worldwide use. Elena became scientific director and a top pediatric neuroscientist. She published 3 books on her methods, lectured at prestigious universities, trained hundreds of therapists. But her greatest pride, 847 children regaining motor functions traditional medicine deemed lost forever. The center's success drew global attention. The World Health Organization studied Elena's methods. Results convinced them to recommend integrating her techniques into standard pediatric rehab protocols. The real revolution was cultural. Proving love, patience, and belief in every child's potential yielded better results than expensive, impersonal therapies. Thousands of therapists worldwide adopted Elena's principles, changing views of childhood disabilities. Diego and Elena found love too. 2 years earlier, they married quietly in Villa del Prado's garden, Carmen as flower girl. Their bond grew from shared mission, mutual respect, and witnessing a miracle that changed them. They had a son, Marco, now one, whom Carmen adored as her little brother. Watching Carmen play with Marco, running after him as he crawled, carrying him when he cried, was daily proof miracles exist, sometimes through unexpected people. One summer evening, dining on the terrace overlooking the Madrid mountains turning pink at sunset, Carmen asked if they remembered when she couldn't walk. Elena took her hand. It's not important to remember not walking, but to celebrate everything you've done since. Diego, lifting laughing Marco, added, every child has miracle potential inside. They just need someone who believes enough to help them find it. That night, tucking in the kids and sitting in their favorite living room under the stars through the big window, Diego and Elena knew they'd built something beyond their family. They'd shown the world true love isn't just felt. It's action transforming lives. The girl who would never walk now ran free, carrying the message. No dream is too big with courage to believe in miracles and determination to make them real. The Herrera Center kept growing, helping more children, training more therapists, changing more lives. But for Diego, Elena, and Carmen, the greatest miracle remained every day, waking knowing love can move mountains, and sometimes those mountains are called impossible.